Okay, our superintendent's report is up next with an update on issues related to false safety threat from February 9th of this year.
Thank you. I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on the timeline, but since a couple of people mentioned that I was going to, I will run through that. It's not really pertinent, but just so people know, we got a call around 9:50 in the morning on Friday, anonymous call about a rumor of a threat. At 9:55, Adam Bolt was able to connect with that person and try to get more explanation about what was going on. It was not a typical report of a threat because normally you don't have all of this. They didn't want their child to be talked to. The kid didn't want to leave school. Student wanted to take a test. Parent didn't want to know their names used. All of that, very unusual. That does not typically translate to what we would consider an actual concern. Immediately we get suspicious about that sort of thing, but we always act and we always are very thorough. Adam contacted county sheriff at 10 o'clock so that they could assist us with investigating the complaint. By 10:15, we had a student come to the main office. Instead, his mom told him to come to the main office and let him know she wanted him to leave school because of a message that they had received by text. At that time, we started to get wind of the fact that the news was rampantly known, unbeknownst to us, because no one had let us know sooner, that there were all these parents and students sharing text messages about a possible rumor of a threat. By 11 a.m., the sheriff stated they could find no source of a shooting, no credible threat whatsoever. We started to get the communications together to get that information out to people, so that by 11:14, we had it on Facebook. By 11:16, we had the email to all staff. And around 11:30, we sent out the Skyalert message, which takes a little bit of time to get to everybody so that they all knew there was no threat of any kind. Somewhere during the day, we don't know when, Lake Country 411 Facebook page put up a message, completely false message, saying that teacher had been threatened with a stabbing apparently, and there was a shooter going on, and it was all completely false. And from around noon to 2 o'clock, Principal Adam Kurth and I were monitoring the South Campus pickup area. Good 2 hours we were out there. Ryan Mangan, athletic director, was in the lobby, and we were there telling people it was safe, telling people it was secure, and we were monitoring and watching the parking lot as parents were coming to pick up kids and students were leaving. So that's, in essence, the timeline. What I wanted to comment on, and I'm going to do something I don't usually do, which is just kind of read from a prepared statement, but I think people need to know possible threats or concerns are brought to the attention of public school administrators on a regular basis. With social media, smartphones, tip lines, there's an incredible volume of communication between and among members of every learning community. When thousands of messages are constantly being exchanged every minute, there are going to be angry words, there's going to be inappropriate conversations, there are going to be messages that ultimately people regret, and some messages may actually be threats, and some could be interpreted as threats. When responsible individuals see something that could be a threat or otherwise have a legitimate concern about the safety of our students and staff, they contact law enforcement or the district. I'm going to repeat that. When people know of a threat and they really care about our safety, they contact law enforcement or the district, or both. That allows the authorities who are trained and responsible to investigate and take the necessary and appropriate action. The concern almost always ends up being false or exaggerated, or a comment that was made in jest, or a misunderstanding, or a misinterpretation of something someone said, or thought they said, or thought they heard. There are communications where someone will state that they're going to do harm to someone, but after we talk to them, we find out the words that they expressed came out when they were upset. They really don't have any interest in hurting anyone. They say they would never hurt anyone. They don't have access to anything that could hurt someone. And that's a very typical thing of the investigations that we do. Some potential threats appear to be made out of thin air, but regardless of the nature, we get to the source, we thoroughly investigate, we get the facts, and we take whatever appropriate action is necessary with the individuals who are involved. With no one in danger, we don't interrupt our daily routines, so our students and staff can focus on learning. When we learned of the alleged threat last Friday, we initiated the same protocol that has worked many times over the past 2 years. The difference between all the previous situations and Friday is we are normally one of the first, if not the first, to be notified about a threat or a concern. That enables us to be out in front of it. And again, if somebody really is aware of a concern, I am trying to understand why they wouldn't go to the authorities first. In the case of Friday's alleged threat, it's clear the district and law enforcement were nowhere near the first to be made aware of the concern. For whatever reason, many parents and students were texting and talking to each other about a completely unsubstantiated rumor before contacting law enforcement. In fact, no one contacted law enforcement until Adam Bolt, our Director of Student Services, contacted law enforcement. We had no way of knowing how many parents and students were posting or texting or calling each other about this false rumor. And by the time we were confident there was no threat, hundreds of parents had already told their children to leave school. We have successfully used our current protocol so many times over the past 2 years, and we have never had to disrupt our normal school day. We work with law enforcement to get to the source of a possible threat as quickly as possible. Usually it's less than an hour. It's often less than half an hour. Sometimes it's a matter of minutes. Our procedures have worked, in part because we became aware of the alleged threat before false, unsubstantiated rumors were spread via text and social media. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first time a false rumor was spread before anyone contacted us. I hope it's the last. This is the first time an adult posted a totally false statement on a local Facebook page that also contributed to spreading this rumor about a completely non-existent threat. We can own and control how we respond to any situation. But if someone has actually seen or heard something that could be considered a threat and they are truly concerned about the safety of our students and staff, we cannot understand or explain why they would not go to the authorities first. That is a key difference that rendered our usually effective protocols ineffective. We are reflecting and developing our next steps. We are absolutely looking at this. We've spent the majority of all the time between Friday and today rehashing, talking through what we could have done differently, looking at video, looking at our procedures, looking at protocols, reaching out to companies about getting the ability to text message to parents. We are acting. Our staff cares about our kids. And some of the messages that I've received, it's hard not to get angry and it's hard not to get emotional. Because anybody that would imply that we don't care about these kids, you can't be more wrong. We are always doing everything we can to make sure everyone in our building is safe. So we're looking at going to lockdown upon receiving any threat or rumor of a threat. We're looking at that. I don't know if that's the right idea. Everyone needs to understand we don't go to lockdown lightly. Some people call it soft lockdown and act like it's not a big deal. Any kind of lockdown is a big deal. Lockdowns cause anxiety. Lockdowns cause fear. Lockdowns get people upset. Lockdowns raise emotions. They're not a small thing. So people shouldn't just say, why didn't you just go to lockdown? It's not that simple. You also don't want to go to lockdown so often that kids get desensitized to lockdown. If anybody's been in a school and sees what happens during a fire drill when a fire alarm goes off, there's no panic, there's no hysteria, there's no worry, there's no concern. No one takes it seriously. We do the drills because it's required by the state. We have to do it every month. Kids are desensitized to it. I don't want that. I don't want them ever to be desensitized to a potential threat. But we're going to look at it and see if that's what we have to do. If our community is okay with lockdowns happening on a regular basis, that could be an option. We've already entered into a contract with the company so that we can use text messages to get to parents' cell phones instead of email. That's absolutely something we can do, should do, we will do. That's something we've already learned from this. But again, our current protocols worked so many times in the past 2 years. It's really difficult to say that somehow that was a failure this time when we weren't made aware of the issue in a timely manner. We're going to communicate with our students and our staff sooner and more often throughout the day. We're going to use the PA system. We're going to use other communication messaging options to make sure that we are communicating better. As I said, we are going to learn. And we're going to put a greater emphasis on proactive communication with students and parents about the proper response to rumors or any information that threatens the safety of students and staff. We need to get our students to come to us instead of texting their parents if they hear a rumor about a threat at school. We need to get parents to go to the police if they hear about a threat that's going on at the school. This idea that they're all talking to each other and the authorities aren't involved doesn't make any sense to me. One challenge that we have, or a major challenge we have, is everything about these situations, we have to react to what others are doing. We can't proactively stop threats. We can't proactively make everybody stop doing that sort of thing. So we're asked to have all the answers to all the questions. We get shots taken at us in hindsight when it's very easy to criticize. But neither the administration or the sheriff department can stop parents from creating a false threat and then texting that to students and other parents instead of notifying law enforcement. We can't stop students from texting their parents instead of the administration or the SRO when they hear students are talking about a non-existent threat. We can't make anyone contact law enforcement or the administration before texting each other. We can't stop anyone from posting false information on Facebook or other social media. We can't stop parents from driving to school and telling their children to leave the building, even though that may be the absolute wrong thing to do. And we cannot control the myriad different ways individuals respond to receiving false information. When all you can do is react, you prepare as best as possible for as many scenarios as you can imagine, but it is impossible to predict every possible situation that can happen. We will continue to do everything in our power to keep our students and our staff safe. We will continue to evaluate our procedures and develop ways to improve. We're going to do our part to learn and adjust what we can control. How to manage all the behaviors and reactions we cannot control is going to be our greatest challenge. 2 last points. I cannot emphasize enough the most important point, which is our students and staff were never in any danger on Friday. We have an experienced administrative team, dedicated teachers and staff. We have a strong relationship with local law enforcement. We have great students. We keep our students and each other safe. I can't emphasize enough. There was never a threat at any point, ever. No one was ever in danger. We communicated that out. It was basically ignored. So we're going to learn, as I said, and do better. We followed our usual procedures, and we found out that they aren't necessarily going to work moving forward. So we're going to figure out what we need to change. We actually are very lucky. We're going to learn more from this than what any drill would teach us, what any simulation would teach us. This was an awesome opportunity, and no one was ever in danger, no one close to getting hurt. So in many ways, we should consider ourselves lucky that we can learn from what happened in such a valuable way. And this last one, I don't know how much of a point, I don't want to argue with anybody. I was there, I was out there with the students, other administrators were out there with the students and staff. I take issue with the word hysteria. I'm not saying some people might not have legitimately had concerns or been afraid and had some fear, and that breaks all of our hearts to hear that because we don't want our students to ever feel that way at school, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen again. I didn't see any hysteria. Our students were calm. Our parents that came to pick up their children were calm. They were appropriate. They were driving normally. They were taking turns. They were letting people in. Our students were walking and talking and smiling and joking. Characterizing it as hysteria is a bit of sensationalization, I would say. Our students were leaving. Nobody was running, screaming, pushing, tripping, crying, arms flailing, wipeouts, cars going over curbs. I mean, what I would consider hysteria, nothing like that was happening. It didn't look much different from our normal dismissal times, quite honestly. I mean, anybody that's there sees it's packed. We have tight spaces. We don't have a lot of room. The cars back up. But everybody is so good about how they handle that situation. I just take issue with anybody that characterizes it as hysteria. And again, if you feel that, I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to say you're wrong. We can respect each other's opinions. But I feel it's doing a disservice to everybody that did such an excellent job in responding to what happened. So concluding, please don't believe everything you read, whether in the newspaper or on an unusual text that you get from a friend or family member. Please seek the truth from people who can verify it before you believe or pass on information that's not accurate. If you ever hear or see something that seems like an actual threat, please contact law enforcement before you share with anybody else. We are always doing our best to keep our students and our staff safe. We need our parents and the rest of the community to also do their best. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question, or more of just like a thing that happened from my perspective, because I got a text from, or a call from my mom during class, and when my mom called me during class, I was like, why would my mom call me during class unless it wasn't something important? So I answered. It's not like the teacher was talking or anything, and she was like, there's a school shooting threat at your school, and the first thing I said to my mom was, does the school know about this? Like, what do you know about it? She was like, I don't know, it's just what I'm hearing. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to the office about this. I went straight to the office, and all I was told was to go back to class. There was no, everything's okay, like, we're getting it handled, law enforcement is, like, being talked to. I was just told to go back to class.
Yeah, and I don't know what we knew at that time, so we may not have had anything that we could share, but that would be our answer because the class is where you're gonna be safest. And that's how we're gonna communicate out to our students, is through our staff. So we do want you in our classrooms. That's what we want you to do. So I'm glad you went to the office. smart move, I'm glad you did that, and when they told you to go back to class, we need you to go back to class. You know, we will communicate as soon as we know something, and we're gonna do better to make sure that you know that there isn't any problem. We absolutely are gonna do better.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Conrad.